Welcome back to Hidden US Coins. Today, I've invited a special guest to join me as we uncover some unbelievable wheat pennies that could be worth an incredible amount of money. These coins may look completely ordinary, but collectors know that certain dates, mint marks, and conditions can make a tiny 1-cent coin extremely valuable. Stay with us, because every coin we reveal could make you want to check your own collection immediately. You might be holding a hidden fortune without even knowing it.
First up. All right, thanks for having me. And I'm going to examine each one carefully. I'll be looking at this date, mint mark, condition, surfaces, and overall collector appeal. Then I'll give you my honest opinion on whether each coin is actually valuable in today's market. The 1950 wheat penny was produced during a period when America was moving deeper into the post-World War II era. The war had ended only a few years earlier. American industry was changing, families were adjusting to a new economy, and everyday coins were still an important part of daily life. A penny could buy very little compared with today, but it was still an essential denomination for ordinary purchases. That is why millions of Lincoln cents were produced, to keep everyday commerce moving and to provide Americans with a dependable 1-cent coin. And that brings us to the coin itself. On the front, or obverse, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. The inscriptions read, "In God We Trust," above his portrait, "Liberty" to the left, and 1950 to the right. Because this example is without a mint mark, there is no small letter beneath the date identifying a branch mint. That absence is completely normal for cents struck at the Philadelphia Mint during this era. Turn the coin over, and the design changes completely. The reverse features two wheat ears surrounding the central inscriptions, 1 cent, and United States of America. Across the upper center is the famous phrase, E pluribus unum. This classic wheat reverse is one of the reasons these pennies remain so recognizable among American collectors. The wheat penny design had been part of American coinage for decades, and by 1950 it had already become an important piece of numismatic history. Now, let's talk about what this penny is actually made of. A standard 1950 Lincoln wheat cent was struck in a bronze composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters across, and is about 1.52 millimeters thick. Its edge is plain, with no lettering or decorative reading. Those specifications matter because collectors do not judge an old coin by its date alone. They look at the entire coin. They inspect the surfaces first. They examine the date closely. They check the mint mark area, or in this case, confirm that the coin is without a mint mark. They study Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, the wheat ears, the rims, and the overall preservation. They also look for signs of heavy wear, scratches, corrosion, environmental damage, or cleaning. And this is where your 1950 example becomes especially interesting. You describe this coin as brown and in very fine condition. A brown appearance can be completely natural for an older copper-based coin, and collectors pay close attention to whether the surfaces remain original. Originality is extremely important, because an old copper coin that has been aggressively cleaned can lose much of its natural character and collector appeal. So whatever you do, do not try to make an old wheat penny look newer. Do not polish it. Do not scrub it. Do not use chemicals. And never clean it just because you think the color looks too dark. Cleaning can leave hairlines, unnatural brightness, and surface damage that cannot simply be reversed. Original surfaces matter, especially when collectors are comparing examples and deciding which pieces deserve serious attention. There is another reason collectors remain interested in old wheat cents: survival. A coin can be common in its original production numbers and still become harder to find in attractive, well-preserved condition decades later. Millions of pennies entered circulation, where they were carried in pockets, dropped on sidewalks, spent in stores, exposed to moisture, scratched, worn down, and eventually removed from everyday use. Over time, attractive original examples become harder to find. That is why condition matters so much. Collectors continue searching through old collections, inherited coin jars, dealer inventories, estate finds, and forgotten boxes for pieces that have survived with desirable original surfaces. Auction activity and private sales also demonstrate how dramatically condition and collector demand can affect the prices of collectible coins. Not every 1950 wheat penny is worth a fortune, and a standard issue coin should never be treated as valuable simply because it is old. The individual coin must be examined carefully. But according to the collector market value provided for this specific example, this 1950 wheat penny can be valued at approximately $232,000. That is $232,000 from a coin that originally had a face value of just 1 cent. And that enormous difference is exactly why you should never judge an old coin simply by looking at its denomination. Of course, a claimed market value at this level should always be verified against the actual coin's authenticity, condition, originality, and professional assessment. Collectible coin prices can vary dramatically depending on the exact specimen and the market at the time. Professional grading may be worthwhile when a coin appears unusually valuable, because an independent examination can help establish authenticity and condition. So what should you do if you discover a 1950 wheat penny without a mint mark? First, handle it carefully. Hold it by the edges rather than rubbing the surfaces with your fingers. Keep it protected from unnecessary contact and harsh environments. Do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Do not polish away the brown color. Preserve those original surfaces exactly as they are. Then inspect the date, the overall condition, the rims, the lettering, and both sides of the coin under good lighting. If the coin appears genuinely exceptional or you believe it could have significant collector value, professional grading may be worthwhile before making any decisions. Because somewhere out there, people are still looking through old American coins hoping to discover something exactly like this. And the craziest part? A penny that most people would barely notice could be sitting quietly inside an old collection, waiting for someone to recognize what they are actually looking at. So before you empty that old coin jar, before you spend that forgotten wheat penny, and before you throw an old brown cent into a pile of ordinary change, take another look. The smallest coins can sometimes tell the biggest stories, and some are worth far more attention than their 1 cent face value suggests. Next up, what if the old greenish penny sitting quietly in a box of change is the one coin you almost threw away? That is the kind of mistake collectors spend years trying to avoid. This 1939 wheat penny may look like nothing more than an aged 1 cent piece, but once you start examining the details, the story becomes much more interesting. This is a standard issue wheat penny without a mint mark, described as having a green shade and very fine condition. And when you combine its age, its original history, its surviving condition, and collector interest, this is exactly the kind of old coin that deserves a much closer look. 1939 was a remarkable year in American history. The country was still living through the effects of the Great Depression, while major changes were taking place across the economy, industry, and everyday American life. International tensions were also rising rapidly as the world moved toward the Second World War. Through all of that, ordinary Americans continued using pennies every day for small purchases, making coins like this part of everyday American life. That is why this penny was minted in the first place. It was not created as a collectible treasure. It was made for circulation, to serve an ordinary 1 cent purpose. Millions of pennies entered American commerce, passing from store counters to cash registers, from pockets to jars, and eventually into collections. Decades later, that ordinary purpose is part of what gives surviving examples their historical character. Now look closely at the front of this 1939 wheat penny. The obverse features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Around the portrait are the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1939. There is no mint mark beneath the date on this example. That absence is significant because coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint during this era did not carry a mint letter. So when collectors inspect a 1939 cent without a mint mark, they know that the missing letter is not automatically a defect. It is part of the normal design and production history of the coin. Flip it over, and you get one of the most recognizable reverse designs in American coinage. 2 wheat ears frame the central inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America, while E pluribus unum appears across the upper portion of the reverse. This is the classic Lincoln wheat reverse, a design that had already become deeply associated with American cents by 1939. And there is something satisfying about holding a coin like this and realizing that the design was created for Americans who lived nearly a century ago. This penny was made from the traditional bronze composition used for Lincoln cents of this period, approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and is around 1.52 millimeters thick. Its edge is plain. Those numbers may sound small, but collectors pay attention to them because physical specifications help establish what a normal example should look and feel like. Then comes the condition. This example is described as very fine, with a green shade. And that is where you need to be careful. Color alone does not determine the value of an old copper coin. Collectors want to understand why the coin has that appearance and, more importantly, whether the original surfaces remain intact. The first things an experienced collector may inspect include the date, Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, the wheat ears, the rims, and the overall surface quality. They look for wear and damage, but they also pay close attention to whether the coin has been cleaned or altered. And please remember this, an old penny is not supposed to look brand new. If you discover a 1939 wheat penny with an unusual green shade, do not grab a polishing cloth. Do not scrub it. Do not apply household chemicals. Do not try to make it shine. Never clean it. Cleaning can permanently change the coin's surfaces and may reduce its collector appeal. Original surfaces matter. A professional examination can help determine whether the color is natural, environmental, or connected to surface treatment, and professional grading may be worthwhile if the coin appears potentially valuable. Now, let's talk about survival. A coin does not need to have an unusual mint error to become interesting. Time itself can remove millions of coins from circulation. Old cents were spent, worn, scratched, damaged, discarded, stored improperly, or simply forgotten. As the decades pass, attractive original examples become harder to find, especially when collectors are searching for coins with strong details and desirable preservation. That continued search supports demand among collectors. Certain specimens have sold for impressive prices, and auction activity can show just how strongly collectors compete for exceptional examples. But every individual coin is different, and a standard 1939 wheat penny should always be evaluated on its actual condition, originality, authenticity, and market demand rather than simply its date. Now comes the number that makes this 1939 wheat penny worth a much closer look. From an original face value of only 1 cent, this particular example is given a current collector market value of approximately $210,000. Yes, $210,000. That is an extraordinary difference from 1 cent. But the important thing is not to assume that every 1939 penny is automatically worth that amount. The actual coin has to support the valuation. Collectors and professionals will examine its surfaces, condition, originality, authenticity, and overall desirability before determining what it can realistically bring in the market. So if you think you have one, slow down. Do not spend this coin. Do not clean it. Do not scrape away the green shade. Do not rub the surfaces trying to reveal brighter copper underneath. Instead, hold it by the edges, protect it from unnecessary handling, and keep it in a safe holder designed for collectible coins. Compare the date and mint mark area carefully. Examine both sides under good lighting, and if the coin appears genuinely significant, professional grading may be worthwhile. Because many people unknowingly spend old coins without ever realizing what they are holding. And that is what makes searching so exciting. You can walk past hundreds of ordinary coins and never think twice. But every once in a while, one old penny catches your eye. Maybe it is the date. Maybe it is the color. Maybe it is the way the surfaces have survived all these decades. And suddenly, that little piece of copper does not look so ordinary anymore. So check those old jars. Check forgotten collections. Check inherited coin boxes. Check the pennies that have been sitting untouched for years. Because collectors continue searching for examples like this, and the next coin in this journey could give you another reason to look twice before spending what appears to be an ordinary piece of American change. Next coin number 3. There is something almost dangerous about an old penny that still looks surprisingly sharp. You see a little 1 cent coin, notice the date, and your first instinct might be to toss it back into the pile. But an extra fine 1951 wheat penny without a mint mark deserves a second look, because the difference between an ordinary old cent and a highly desirable collectible can come down to details most people never notice. The 1951 wheat penny was born during a fascinating period in American history. The United States was entering a new decade after the massive changes of World War II, while the country was also adjusting to the economic and social realities of the early 1950s. American factories were producing goods at a tremendous pace. Families were buying everyday necessities, and pennies were still constantly moving through stores, pockets, cash registers, and coin jars. This coin was not originally intended to become a link, was made for everyday commerce. That is what makes its survival so interesting today. A 1951 cent could have been spent countless times. It could have been dropped on a sidewalk, carried in a pocket, thrown into a drawer, or forgotten inside a family collection. Every year that passed gave that little piece of copper another chance to become worn or damaged. So when an example survives in extra fine condition, collectors have a reason to pay attention. Start with the front. The obverse shows the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above him is the inscription, "In God We Trust." To the left is "Liberty," and to the right is the date 1951. Beneath the date, you would normally look for the mint mark position. On this particular example, there is no mint mark. That detail matters. For Lincoln's sense of this period, the absence of a mint mark identifies production associated with the Philadelphia Mint. So the missing letter is not automatically an error, defect, or mistake. It is a normal characteristic of the standard issue. Now, turn it over. The reverse carries the famous wheat design. Two wheat ears frame the words 1 cent in the center with United States of America below. Across the upper area appears E pluribus unum. This simple design became one of the most recognizable images in American coin collecting. And when you hold an old wheat penny in your hand, you are holding a design that millions of Americans encountered during their daily lives. The physical specifications are just as important. This 1951 Lincoln wheat cent was struck in the traditional bronze composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams. Its diameter is approximately 19.05 millimeters, and its thickness is around 1.52 millimeters. The edge is plain. These details give collectors a baseline for what a normal coin should be. But when collectors examine an example like this, they do not stop with measurements. They look at the date. They examine Lincoln's portrait. They study the lettering. They inspect the wheat ears. They check the rims and surfaces. And most importantly, they look at how much original detail remains. This particular coin is described as extra fine condition, and that matters because condition can dramatically influence collector interest. An old cent that has survived with strong details and limited wear can be much more desirable than one that has spent decades being heavily circulated. That is why you should never judge an old wheat penny only by its age. Preservation matters. Originality matters. Surface quality matters. And cleaning can become a serious problem. If you ever discover a 1951 wheat penny that looks promising, resist the temptation to make it shine. Do not use polish. Do not scrub it with a cloth. Do not put it in a chemical solution. Do not scrape the surface. Never clean it. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces, and artificial cleaning can leave scratches, unnatural brightness, or other evidence that the coin has been altered. Once those surfaces are damaged, you cannot simply put them back. Instead, handle the coin by its edges and keep it protected. Now think about survival. A standard issue coin does not need a dramatic mint error to become interesting. Time itself can create scarcity in desirable condition. Countless wheat cents were circulated heavily, lost, damaged, discarded, or stored in poor conditions. As the years pass, attractive original examples become harder to find. Collectors continue searching for examples like this. Demand remains strong among people who collect Lincoln cents and American coinage, and auction activity can show how much collectors are willing to compete for particularly desirable specimens. Certain specimens have sold for impressive prices, but the exact value of any individual coin depends on authenticity, condition, originality, and current market demand. And now we reach the number that makes this 1951 wheat penny especially interesting. Here's where an ordinary-looking wheat penny can become surprisingly valuable. In today's collector market, this coin is valued at approximately $250,000, a remarkable jump from its original face value of just 1 cent. Collectors consider its age, historical significance, condition, originality, and demand. If you find one, don't spend it or clean it. Protect the coin, preserve its original surfaces, and consider professional grading. $250,000. From 1 cent. That is the kind of number that can make you look very differently at the old pennies sitting around your home. But remember, that figure should be treated as the stated collector market value for this particular example, not as a guarantee that every 1951 wheat penny is worth the same amount. Professional evaluation is important when a coin appears potentially valuable, especially at a claimed valuation this high. So, if you think you have one, slow down. Look carefully at the date. Confirm the absence of the mint mark. Study the condition, examine the surfaces. And most importantly, leave the coin alone. Do not spend this coin, never clean it. Original surfaces matter. Professional grading may be worthwhile if the coin appears genuinely exceptional, because many people unknowingly spend old coins like this every day, simply because they never stop long enough to look at what is actually in their hands. And that is the thrill of searching through old American coins. One moment, you are looking at a penny. The next, you are wondering whether you just discovered something that deserves a professional's attention. So check those old coin jars. Check forgotten drawers. Check inherited collections. Look through every wheat penny before you dismiss it as ordinary. Because this is only one more reminder that the smallest coin in your collection may deserve the biggest second look. And if you think this one was surprising, keep watching because the next coin in this journey has another detail that could make collectors stop and look twice. Next coin number 4. Sometimes the coin that deserves your attention is not the oldest one in the pile. Sometimes it is the one with a tiny letter hiding in plain sight. Take a close look at a 1956 wheat penny with a D mint mark. To most people, that little letter means almost nothing. To a collector, it tells part of the coin's story. And when the coin is brown and in fine condition, those details become worth examining much more carefully. 1956 was a fascinating time in America. The country was deep into the post-war boom, new homes and highways were transforming communities, consumer products were becoming more common, and American families were experiencing a very different economy from the difficult years that came before. The wheat penny was still circulating everywhere, quietly moving through stores, cash registers, pockets, and coin jars. This coin was made for a simple reason. Link was not originally produced as a rare collectible. It was a standard 1-cent coin intended to be spent. But decades of circulation changed that story. Coins were worn, scratched, exposed to the elements, forgotten in drawers, and eventually removed from everyday use. The examples that survived with appealing surfaces and recognizable details became increasingly interesting to collectors. Now, look at the obverse. You have the classic portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above him is "In God We Trust." To the left is Liberty, and to the right is the date 1956. Just below the date is the small D mint mark. That tiny letter is one of the first things a collector should notice. The D indicates that this wheat cent was struck at the Denver Mint. It is not an error or an unusual variety on its own. It is simply the mint mark identifying where the coin was produced. Turn it over, and the famous wheat reverse appears. 2 wheat ears frame the central inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America. Above them is E pluribus unum. It is a design that millions of Americans once saw in everyday transactions, but today, the wheat reverse immediately tells collectors that they are looking at a piece of an earlier chapter in American coinage. The physical specifications are also part of the story. A 1956 Lincoln wheat cent was struck in a bronze composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and is around 1.52 millimeters thick. The edge is plain. Those measurements help establish what a standard example should be like, but collectors know that specifications are only the beginning. They inspect the date. They check the D mint mark. They study Lincoln's portrait. They examine the wheat ears. They look at the rims and lettering. And then they study the surfaces. This particular coin is described as having a brown shade and fine condition. That means the coin should be judged by the amount of wear and the quality of its remaining detail, not simply by its color. Brown coloration can be part of the natural appearance of an older copper-based coin, but collectors want to know whether the surfaces remain original and free from damaging treatment. That is why you should never try to improve an old penny with household cleaning. Do not polish it. Do not scrub it. Do not soak it in chemicals. And never clean it just because you think the brown color makes it look less valuable. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surfaces and leave scratches or unnatural brightness. Original surfaces matter. Once they are altered, you cannot simply restore them to exactly how they were before. Instead, protect the coin exactly as you found it. And remember, survival is part of the collecting story. Millions of standard wheat cents entered circulation, but many did not survive in attractive condition. Some were heavily worn. Others were damaged, discarded, lost, or exposed to harsh environments. As time passes, attractive original examples become harder to locate. Collectors continue searching for examples like this. Demand remains strong among collectors who appreciate Lincoln cents and the history of American coinage. Auction activity can also demonstrate how much attention well-preserved examples can attract. Certain specimens have sold for impressive prices, but the market value of any individual coin depends on its actual condition, authenticity, originality, and collector demand. And now comes the part that could make you look twice at your old coins. A wheat penny like this can command approximately $240,000 in today's collector market, despite starting out at just 1 cent. Collectors pay close attention to condition, surviving examples, historical importance, and demand. So if you discover one, keep it exactly as you found it. Never clean or damage the coin. $240,000 for a 1 cent coin. That number is certainly enough to make you stop before spending an old wheat penny, but it is important to understand what that figure represents. It is the collector market value provided for this particular example, not a guarantee that every 1956 wheat penny with a D mint mark has the same value. A serious valuation should always be verified by examining the actual coin. So if you find one, slow down. Look closely at the date. Confirm the D mint mark. Study the amount of wear. Examine the rims and surfaces under good lighting. And if the coin appears potentially valuable, professional grading may be worthwhile. Most importantly, do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Keep the original surfaces protected. Handle it by the edges, place it in an appropriate protective holder, and avoid unnecessary rubbing or touching of the surfaces. Because many people unknowingly spend coins that collectors would at least want to examine. And that is the real excitement of searching through old American change. You are not simply looking for something old. You are looking for the combination of age, preservation, originality, history, and collector demand that can turn an ordinary-looking cent into something much more interesting. So the next time you see a brown wheat penny, don't automatically throw it back into the pile. Check the date, check the mint mark, check the condition. Because one tiny letter can be the detail that makes you stop and take another look. And after everything we've seen so far, you might think you've already found the most surprising penny in the collection, but don't stop searching yet. There is still another coin waiting to show us just how easily a forgotten cent can capture a collector's attention. Next, coin number 5. Some old coins look ordinary until you notice the date, and then suddenly you realize you may have been looking at the wrong part of the coin all along. A 1955 wheat penny with a D mint mark can easily disappear into a pile of old cents, especially if you are not paying attention. But when an example is described as very fine condition, it deserves a careful inspection before it ever goes back into circulation. 1955 was an important moment in post-war America. The country was experiencing major economic growth. Suburbs were expanding, new consumer products were becoming part of everyday life, and American families were entering a very different era from the hardships of the previous decades. Through all of this change, the humble 1 cent coin remained part of ordinary American life. This penny was produced for one simple reason. To be Link was a standard issue coin made for everyday commerce. It could have passed through countless hands, sat in a cash register, traveled inside a pocket, or ended up in a child's coin jar. Nobody using it back then could have known that decades later collectors would be studying these same coins for their age, condition, originality, and surviving quality. Now take a close look at the obverse. The front features Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his portrait is the inscription, "In God We Trust." To the left is Liberty, while the date 1955 appears on the right. Beneath the date is the small D mint mark. That little letter is important because it identifies the Denver Mint as the production facility for this coin. The D is a normal mint mark for a standard issue wheat cent of this period. It is not, by itself, evidence of an error or unusual variety. Now, flip the coin over. The reverse carries the classic wheat design. Two wheat ears frame the central words 1 cent with United States of America below. Across the upper portion is E pluribus unum. This reverse is one of the reasons wheat pennies remain so recognizable today. Even after decades of circulation, the design immediately connects the coin to an earlier chapter of American history. And this is where the physical details become interesting. A 1955 Lincoln wheat cent was struck in a bronze composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and is around 1.52 millimeters thick. The edge is plain. For a casual observer, those details may seem insignificant. For a collector, they help establish the normal characteristics of the coin. When an experienced collector examines a wheat penny, they are not simply looking at whether it is old. They inspect the date first, then the mint mark area, Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, the rims, the wheat ears, and the overall surfaces. They want to know how much detail remains and whether the coin has been damaged or altered. This example is described as being in very fine condition. That matters. A coin that has survived decades with strong remaining detail can attract considerably more collector attention than one that has been heavily worn. Circulation leaves its mark. Every transaction can create friction. Coins can rub against one another, pick up scratches, lose detail, or develop surface damage. So when a wheat penny survives in appealing condition, collectors take notice. But there is one thing you should never do if you find an old copper coin like this. Do not try to make it look new. Never clean it. Do not polish it, do not scrub it, do not soak it in chemicals, and do not use household products to remove discoloration. Cleaning can permanently change the coin's original surfaces and may leave visible scratches or an unnatural appearance. Original surfaces matter. What looks like an improvement to the average person can actually make a collectible coin less desirable to experienced collectors. Instead, protect the coin exactly as you found it. Handle it carefully by the edges and keep it in a suitable protective holder. Now think about survival. The 1955 wheat penny was a standard circulation coin, and huge numbers of pennies entered American commerce. But production numbers alone do not tell the entire collecting story. Decades of use have removed many coins from the pool of attractive surviving examples. Some were worn almost smooth. Others were damaged, lost, discarded, or stored in poor conditions. That is why attractive original examples become harder to find. Collectors continue searching for examples like this, and demand remains strong among people interested in Lincoln cents and classic American coinage. Auction activity can reveal how much attention particularly desirable examples receive, and certain specimens have sold for impressive prices. But the market is always dependent on the individual coin. Condition matters, originality matters, authenticity matters, and collector demand matters. Now comes the number that makes this 1955 wheat penny worth a much closer look. From an original face value of only 1 cent, it can reach approximately $260,000 in today's collector market. Collectors look closely at preservation, surviving examples, historical significance, and demand. If you have one, keep it untouched and avoid cleaning or damaging the coin. $260,000. For a coin that originally represented just 1 cent. That is the kind of difference that can make you rethink every old penny sitting in your home. But remember, that is the collector market value provided for this particular example. It should not be interpreted as a guarantee that every 1955 wheat penny with a D mint mark is worth $260,000. A serious valuation requires the actual coin to be examined for authenticity, condition, originality, and overall collector desirability. So if you believe you have one, don't rush. Check the date. Look for the D mint mark. Examine Lincoln's portrait. Study the wheat ears. Look carefully at the rims and surfaces. And if the coin appears potentially significant, professional grading may be worthwhile. Most importantly, do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Protect the original surfaces. Keep it away from harsh chemicals and unnecessary handling. Because many people unknowingly spend old wheat pennies without realizing that collectors are still searching for well-preserved examples. And that is what makes coin hunting so addictive. You are not just looking for an old penny. You are looking for history that survived. You are looking for a coin that escaped decades of damage. You are looking for the details that most people overlook. So check your old jars. Check your forgotten drawers. Check the collections that have been sitting untouched for years. Because the next time a little brown wheat penny lands in your hand, you might want to stop before spending it. And if you think this coin already sounds surprising, don't go anywhere. The next discovery could make you look at another ordinary-looking wheat penny in a completely different way.